This is the 6-minute review of Gemara Nazir Daf Ches, and we begin a Mishnah, and the Mishnah is actually the first cousin of what we learned on Daf Zayin, because this is the source. If someone says he's a Nazir, like the hair on his head, the dirt on the ground, the sand in the sea, what is the halacha? Similar to what we learned yesterday, he's a Nazir Oilam, he's a Nazir forever, but he's allowed to be Megaleach once every 30 days. It's a reoccurring Nazirus, but he's allowed to get a haircut every 30 days. Rebbe disagrees, and Rebbe says, when can you actually be Megaleach every 30 days? Only if he said in the plural, Nazirais Kisaroishik Avers Kochalayam. Part A of the Mishnah. Part B of the Mishnah. If someone says he's a Nazir, like my house is full, the box is full, we check him and we ask him. If he says, I meant whether one large Nazirus, 30 days. If he says, I meant Stam, then we view the box as if it's filled with Chardol, mustard seed, and he's a Nazir forever. Because obviously you can fill up a box with many mustard seed. Part C of the Mishnah. If someone says, I'm a Nazir from here until Makkah employee, which of course we saw yesterday in Daf Zayin as well, we evaluate how many days it's until that place. Less than 30 is a Nazir for 30 days. If not, the amount of days on the journey. If he says in part D, he's a Nazir like the days of the sun, Yemoisa Chama, then he's a Nazir for 365 consecutive Nazirais. Comments Rav Yehuda, I saw such a story, and the person died in his Naziris because of the very, very lengthy Naziris that he accepted upon himself. Asks the Gemara, in case B of the Mishnah, the box was filled with chardal. Why? Why don't we view the box as if it's filled with gourd, as if it's filled with cucumbers, large items, and obviously there'd be less of a Naziris in such a scenario, and there'd be a Taikanta. And what's really at the crux of the question is, why are we assuming Stam Naziris is Lahachmir? Why don't we assume that there's a way to get out of this Naziris? And I should say Stam Naziris. I should say Suffolk Naziris. And really the way that Taisa speaks out the question is the klal in general is the opposite. Suffolk Naziris is Lehakel. So answers the Gemara, the reason why, explains Chizkiah, the reason is because the Mishnah is the Shita of Rav Shimon. And Rav Shimon says a person is indeed machnis himself into a suffix, even though the suffix is going to be more stringent than the vadai. And the source of this din is if someone accepts upon himself naziros, if the kri has 100 core, and he goes to check and the kri is not there, so we don't know if it has 100 core. Rav Shimon says it is asur because suffix naziros. Rav Shimon argues on the question and says lahachmir, and Rav Yehuda says no. So says Chizkiah, the sheet of our Mishnah is Rav Shimon. That's why reviewing the box and the house as if it's filled with mustard and not large items. Rav Yochanan argues on Chizkiah, and a second way of explaining the Mishnah, that the Mishnah doesn't have to only be Rav Shimon. We could even explain that the Mishnah is like Rav Yehuda. And the reason is, in the case of if the Kri is 100 core, there we're not sure if he accepts an Naziris. That's the reason why Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon disagree. But in our Mishnah, he certainly accepted Nazir. It's just a question for how long. That's the reason why even Rabbi Yehuda would agree. Says the Gemara, but wait, why don't we still say, okay, he accepted upon himself a Nazirus, but say it's a shorter term. Say that it's, again, the box is full with Kishuan and Diluim, and again, there will be a Takana for going with Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Chesam and Beis, and indeed we'll be finishing the parak in a moment. Rav Yehuda holds like Rebbe. That what we learned in the Mishnah. Rebbe says it's our Mishnah. Ein zeh megaleach, and in this case you're not megaleach once every 30 days. And what's the only case is if you said Naziros in the plural. Says the Gemara, wait. So you're telling me Rav Yochanan just answered the Mishnah doesn't have to be Rav Yochanan like Chizkiah. The Mishnah can be Rav Yehuda. And Rav Yehuda's going with Rebbe. Says the Gemara, wait. Does Rav Yehuda really hold of Rebbe? But we learned in the Mishnah, if someone says, I'm a Nazir like the mini Nimosa Chama, Rav Yehuda says that there was a story and the person died in his Naziris. So if you're going to tell me that the reason is because he accepted many, many Naziris, 365, it makes sense he died in Naziris. But if you're going to say he accepted one Naziris, which would be Rebbe Shita, because he didn't say Nazirais in the plural, would there be such a problem? And furthermore, another raya that he doesn't hold of Rebbe, we learned in a Brayser of Yudah says, Arini Nazir, Minyan Yalkuti Kai, it's Minyan Shibali Shemitah. What do? We count how many times, and that is his Naziris. So says the Gemara, and we know that what? Rebbe doesn't subscribe that there's a difference in the minyan. And Rebbe says, no, we don't subscribe with the word minyan. So two different proofs, says the Gemara, that Rav Yehuda can't subscribe to Rav Yehuda. So we have a problem. If we're going to say that Rav Yehuda is the Shita of the Mishnah, how could that work if Rav Yehuda seemingly would not subscribe to the Shita of Rabbi? Answers the Gemara, we could say that Rav Yehuda is the Shita of the Mishnah. We don't have to say like Chizkiah, that's only Rav Yechanan. Rav Yehuda holds like Rabbi in one case, and he argues about Rabbi in one case. He holds like Rabbi in one case, that Nazir is Kibul, he argues about in the other case, that Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda differentiates between whether you said minyan or not. And we conclude the parak in which we said if someone says he's a Nazir kol yimei chayai, he's a Nazir olam. If he says a Nazir olam, if ilu meir shana, if ilu elef shana, he's not a Nazir olam. Why not? Because he gave a number. El Nazir le olam. And finally, if someone says arini Nazir achas, Nazir ve'achas, so it's 1 and 1 is 2. If he says another one, it's 3 and another one, it's 4. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is that maybe we would have thought 3 is doubled and it's 6. Kamashlan, it's not. And finally, if someone says Arini Nazir, Simcha says the word Hein is 1, Digan is 2, Trigan is 3, Tetragon is 4, and we know what's a pentagon? A 5-shaped figure. And we have a source to this that a base eagle, Digan, Tetragon, and Pentagon is not Mitami bin Egayin, but a Tetragon is Mitami bin Egayin. And we learn that from Kir Ki Rois. Kir Ki Rois is 4, which is going to be the Tetragon. The Pentagon has 5 cases. Hadron Allah, we should continue being able to chazer daf by daf, parak by parak, b'siyata dishmaya.